Good morning from Athens, Greece. It's around 8:45 here on this Friday morning, and we have a lot of news to get into. So let's just do it. Let's talk about so many different news topics, mostly around Russia and Ukraine. We'll do a good clown world as well, and the clown world has to deal with Hungary and Ukraine. But first, let's talk about interest rates. And Russia has lowered their interest rates to 11%. This brings their interest rates to about where it was pre-special military operation. So while the collective West is trying to figure out ways to raise their interest rates just by a little bit, because they can't raise them too much, otherwise their economies would collapse, but they really don't have any other weapons to deal with runaway inflation, so they're trying to figure out ways to raise the interest rate. Russia is now lowering their interest rates. When the shock and awe sanctions were launched against Russia, in order to deal with the shock and awe, they put their interest rates at 20%, and 90 days later, it's pretty much back down to pre-special military operation level. Putin also signed a decree where he is going to raise pensions by 10%. Putin is a pretty conservative leader when it comes to the economy and to fiscal policy. I mean, he's very conservative with regards to the economy, and for him to make a move like this to raise pensions by 10%, I think that says a lot. That says that Putin sat down with his team, they looked at all the numbers, and they said, things are not looking too bad. Not looking bad at all. So let's help out the pensioners, and let's raise pensions by 10%. So the signals coming out of the Kremlin are that things are looking up. Yeah, they're going to have a hard time in the next 6 months, given the sanctions that were thrown at them. But for the most part, they've weathered the storm, and it looks like they're coming out on the other side of it much, much stronger. So the collective West is falling apart from the sanctions that they placed on Russia, while Russia is making moves that signal a nice recovery could be on the way in 6 months. The Russian economy is a lot more resilient than anyone could have ever imagined. We've been at the Duran, we've been bullish on the Russian economy, and we didn't expect it to be this resilient. And I remember speaking with Alexander once, like 3-4 years ago. He told me, he said, the Russian economy is like a big wheel. It's like a massive wheel. Once you get that wheel turning, it's hard to turn, but once you get enough energy and enough force and strength to turn that wheel, this big wheel, then the thing's never going to stop. I mean, it's just going to keep on spinning. And I think we've seen the energy put forth to turn that wheel, and it's going to start spinning. So that's the news coming out of the Russian economy. It sure looks like Russia's winning. I don't know if, the mainstream media talks about Russia losing and losing. I don't know. It looks like winning to me. On the ground, they're definitely winning. And we have the news coming out of Ukraine that the area of Lyman is now under Russian control. Russia is now moving towards Slaviansk. They're moving towards the highway, the Bukhmut highway, which is pretty much the main highway, if not the only highway that can supply Ukraine troops with which can provide logistic support to the Ukraine military in that encirclement, in that cauldron. And it looks like the Russians are in firm control of what's going on in the Donbass. As a matter of fact, it seems very, very bad for the Ukraine military there. I'm getting reports And these reports are corroborated not only by the Russian side of things, but by the Ukraine side of things, that a lot of surrenders, a lot of military are killed, or they're surrendering, or they're retreating. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it really seems like in the Lugansk area, a collapse of the Ukraine military could be on its way. That's how it seems. We were getting reports that 8,000, between 8 and 20,000 Ukraine military were in this cauldron, and it now looks like that number is around 16,000 in various. It's not even one cauldron, in various cauldrons in the Lysychansk, Lugansk front. It sure looks like Russia is winning across the board, from the economic side of things and from the military side of things. We had the report from Reuters yesterday as well, and this is an interesting one, where they claim, according to an EU Judicial Commission representative. It's an EU commissioner who deals with judicial things. And Reuters is reporting that this EU official said that the actual amount of foreign reserves that were confiscated by Europe, Russian foreign reserves confiscated by Europe, by EU countries, was actually around 23 billion, much lower than the initial amount we all thought, that 300 billion amount. Well, it's not anywhere even close to that number. And they did mention the Reuters article, and this is if you believe the Reuters article and if you believe this EU commissioner. So if you believe these numbers, it's much lower, but the Reuters article did say that 100 billion was confiscated by the United States. So going by the numbers from the EU and the United States, that would put the foreign reserves that were stolen by the collective West at around 130 billion and not 300 billion. And this is really interesting. It's an interesting development. I'm at an area, by the way, known as Likavitos here in Greece. There's like a big mountain. You can kind of see it with a church up top. And if you walk down here, you enter the area known as Kolonaki, which is where all the hip, cool elite hang out. But it's like a hilly area, something like maybe San Francisco. A lot of hills going up and down. That's what this area kind of reminds me of. But this 130 billion number, this is much lower than the 300 billion. And the Russians, Alexander made a really good point on the video we did yesterday on the Duran. Check it out, where we talk about this. Alexander said this. He said, after I read this Reuters report, and going off of this Reuters report, if you drill down to Kremlin statements with regards to the 300 billion that was confiscated in foreign reserves, you actually find out that the Kremlin and the central bank and the Putin administration, they never really admitted to losing 300 billion. They always came out with statements and comments saying, yes, we had foreign reserves stolen. Yes, it was a significant amount, but they never really confirmed the number. They never denied it, and they never confirmed it. And I think, actually, I'm positive they did that on purpose. Russia is playing, the game they're playing, it's keeping it very close to the chest. They're being very quiet. They're not saying much. They're not talking much. And they're letting the collective West and the mainstream media and the collective West just do all the talking. And a lot of the times, they're shooting themselves in both feet, or they're in a circular firing squad shooting at each other, or the mainstream media is pushing out all kinds of nonsense, and that nonsense leads to more hysteria and more destructive sanctions and actions that are taken by the collective West. And Russia just kind of sits back and they just watch. And I think that's what you saw with this foreign currency reserve story. 130 billion is not a small amount. That's a lot, but it's not 300 billion. And it also means that Russia has a lot more money than they led us on to believe. They have, say, 500 billion in reserves, and now, given the money that they're making from the higher oil prices and gas prices, they probably have a lot more money sitting in the piggy bank that they could play with. So this was really a clever move by Russia. Very smart. They led everyone to believe that they had less money than what they really do have. And that's smart. That's smart. So that was an interesting story as well. We also have the news story about the oil embargo and oil shipments, actually, to be more precise. And this is a story that I reported about, I'd like to say about a week ago. And it has to do with the fact that Greece, the Greek government, the Mitsotakis government, was not going to be able to follow through on an oil embargo. Much like Hungary, the Greek government was not going to be able to embargo Russian oil because the country that's transporting the oil all around the world, well, it's Greece, the Greek shippers. And the Greek shippers, Malta and Cyprus, but really it's the Greek shippers that are making all the money transporting oil. That's their main line of business. And the Greek shipping industry, as I mentioned in my video last week, the Greek shipping industry, well, they run Greece. I mean, they control who gets into government. They control all the business. They run everything. They own the football clubs. I mean, if you cross the Greek shippers, they'll get 2 million football fans on the streets, like next day. So they run the show. And I knew that Mitsotakis, he was not going to be able to sign off on the oil embargo because you're going to damage the Greek shippers. And his government would collapse if he did that. Not to mention the fact that a lot of these Greek politicians, I won't get into specifics, but a lot of the Greek political class, well, they also, I want to cross, but I don't want to get hit by a car. That would be bad. They also have a piece of the Greek shipping action. You better believe it, the Greek political class. They have stakes in Greek shipping, so they don't want to hurt themselves either. Anyway, we now have the news confirmed from a lot of mainstream media sources that the Greek shipping industry is in fact, they're moving around a lot of Russian oil. A lot. They're moving a lot to China because China is stocking up. They're refilling, topping up their petroleum reserves. India is buying a boatload of Russian oil. They're buying so much oil that one of the largest refineries in India, if not the world, was scheduled for maintenance, and they actually delayed it because they've got so much Russian oil coming in that they said, look, let's just delay the maintenance on this refinery and deal with all this Russian oil that we're purchasing. And you have a lot of Russian oil being sent to Europe. And Greece is, they're the ones that are shipping the oil all over the place. And this is great because Mitsotakis was in Congress just last week. He was in the U.S. Congress just last week, and he was meeting with the Biden White House, and he gave a speech to Congress, and he talked about how Greece is united with Europe and in solidarity with the United States to bring down the Putin regime, and to defeat the Russian tyranny. That's what he was telling Congress, and he got a standing ovation. And all the Greek mainstream media was talking about how stunning and brave Mitsotakis was, and how the American Congress, they just embraced the Greek leader, and he showed courage to stand up to Putin and all of this nonsense. And now we're getting confirmed reports that the Greek shipping industry is making a boatload of money transporting Russian oil. The hypocrisy of it all. Just such BS coming out of EU leaders and collective West leaders. Complete BS. So that's another story that I wanted to get out to everybody. Let's also talk real quickly about how the Russians have opened up another corridor in the Black Sea, in the Azov Sea to be more precise. And this is the second corridor that they've opened up in order to debunk the BS naval blockade narrative. So the Russians already had one corridor for ships to leave Ukraine, supposedly all the ships that are full of wheat that can't get out of Ukraine because the Russians are blocking them and they want to starve the world. You know, that narrative, the Russian blockade, we're all going to starve narrative. Well, the Russians had one corridor that was open. I reported on this, and it's been open for a while now. And the Russians have said, we already have one sea corridor open for ships to leave safely from Ukraine. So we don't know what you're talking about with regards to a naval blockade. Well, one wasn't enough. What the Russians did is that they actually swept up all the mines. What's it called? They demined it. Yeah, they demined the sea around Mariupol. They reopened the port of Mariupol, and they opened up a second corridor for ships to leave. And they've announced it to everybody, to the entire world. And they've said, look, we now have 2 sea corridors that are open for ships to leave Ukraine and to get whatever wheat and food, whatever you want, to get it out. So this is a very smart move again by Russia. They debunk the naval blockade narrative, not with one corridor, but with 2 corridors. And you know, the last couple of days you haven't been hearing about the naval blockade, have you? I think the Russians they took some time to clear up the mines placed by the Zelensky regime, by the way. They took some time to clean those up, and they opened up another corridor. So very, very smart move there. And let's see. Another smart move, but God, I mean, they're just winning across the board. They're winning across the board. There's no other way to look at it. Even Draghi, this is the next story that I want to get to. The Italian puppet prime minister, because he wasn't elected, he was placed as prime minister of Italy. Anyway, the unelected prime minister of Italy actually called up Putin the other day. And he called Putin. You notice how the Russians are not calling anybody? It's the collective West that's calling the Russians. Anyway, Draghi called Putin, and he wanted to discuss the food issue. And Putin told him straight up. He said, look, Draghi, here's the deal. We've had a record harvest. We got plenty of food, plenty of wheat. We're pretty much the #1 exporter of wheat in the world, one of the big ones at least. And we'll be glad, very happy to get our wheat, as we always do, to Europe. And we have one condition: you got to lift the embargoes and the sanctions. That was it on wheat. He also said fertilizer. I actually want to get a quote from what Putin said, because what he said was really, really interesting. And remember, this is Draghi. Draghi called Putin, not the other way around. So Putin said that Russia is ready to make a significant contribution to overcoming the food crisis by exporting both fertilizer and grain if the Western embargo is lifted. This is what Putin told Mario Draghi. Let me see if I've got some other quotes. Putin pointed out that it was groundless to accuse Russia of problems with agricultural products reaching global markets. This is according to the Kremlin readout of the call. And Putin also attributed the situation to disruptions in production and supply chains, as well as financial policies of Western countries during the COVID pandemic, which were only aggravated by the anti-Russian restrictions imposed by the US and the EU over the conflict in Ukraine. Putin just laid it out to Draghi. You want to know why the EU is suffering across the board? because you guys are a bunch of idiots. You had the coup, you printed a ton of money, and then you decided to put these stupid sanctions on us because you thought it would do something to us. You thought it would collapse my government. That's what Putin told Draghi. And I'm sure Draghi, the Goldman Sachs ECB banker, I'm sure he just sat there and was just like, crap. Crap. We've been outplayed. Anyway, that was, I thought that was interesting. Very interesting. Lavrov also sounded off on the, since we're talking about Italy, Lavrov sounded off on the Italian proposal that was submitted, this Italian ceasefire, which is pretty much a return to the Minsk agreement, if not worse. But Lavrov said that the Italian proposal was never shared with Russia and cannot be serious. Lavrov, man. Lavrov is just, guys, man, no words to explain Lavrov. Russia doesn't believe the Ukraine peace proposal that the Italian government reportedly shared with Kiev and Western allies to be a viable solution to the ongoing crisis, Russian Minister Sergei Lavrov said in an interview with RT Arabic. The foreign minister said Luigi Di Maio has been active in the media promoting the Italian four-point initiative. But we only read about it, the foreign minister said. If judged by what the media said about the proposal, it makes Moscow pity the lack of comprehension by its author of what is going on and their lack of knowledge of the subject and the history of the issue, Lavrov said. Oh boy. Anyway, I covered quite a lot, actually, in pretty quick time. And we walked, my God. I almost fell there. I almost took a spill. And we walked quite a bit as well. So let's do our clown world then. We've got quite an interesting clown world. And it has to do with Ukraine, a Ukraine energy minister threatening Hungary. Yeah, threatening Hungary, saying that if Hungary does not vote for the oil embargo, then Ukraine is going to cut oil supplies via the Druzhba pipeline. And let me get this this quote here. And this is coming from the Ukrainian energy minister, Lana Zarkal, speaking during an online discussion at the Kiev Security Forum. Zarkal criticized the policy of the Hungarian government, which is blocking a sixth round of EU sanctions. In Zarkal's opinion, Hungary is using the Russian military offensive as an instrument to achieve its own goals and thinks that now it can demand anything from the EU. So it's not Zelensky and his regime that believes they can demand anything from the collective West. They're not the ones demanding more weapons, demanding more money, demanding submission by collective West leaders, demanding all of these crazy things that they've been demanding. It's not the Zelensky regime, it's Hungary. Anyway, she said that Ukraine has a wonderful lever of pressure in its hands. It's the Druzhba pipeline. And she added that something could happen with Hungary's separate line of the Druzhba. And in my opinion, there's a quote, and in my opinion, it would be very appropriate if something happened to it. But again, it is in the hands of the government and the president to make decisions on political issues, to decide if we really want to talk to Orban in a language that he understands and that he imposes on the EU, or if we are not ready for that yet. So basically, it's like mafia tactics. This is like either do what we say, or Hungary, you're going to wake up with a horse head in your bed, referencing the Godfather 1 movie. You know, it's like mafia talk. It's ridiculous. She did walk back her statement, by the way, Miss Zerkal. She said, in order to calm the situation down, she went on to Facebook and she said, but to calm the situation down, it is worth specifying that the official position of the Ministry of Energy of Ukraine on this matter is unchanged. Ukraine is a reliable transporter of energy carriers to Europe. So that was her statement. on Facebook. She said she did not mean to cause a diplomatic scandal. Hungary, by the way, has not commented on this statement. I don't think Hungary should comment on this statement, to be honest, because it's probably beneath them to comment to mafia tactic rhetoric coming out of the Zelensky regime. Anyway, what a clownish statement from a clownish regime, and it shows their desperation. It shows their desperation, and it shows also that Hungary is winning. You want to talk about winning? Hungary is also winning. And I think I will leave the video there, everybody. Coming to you from Athens, Greece. I'm trying to think if I have anything else to discuss as I'm walking here downtown. This is the university here, the Law University, and it's pretty much in the center of Athens. I mean, you don't get more downtown than this. Anyway, I will leave the video there. If something else comes up, I'll put out a second update. Take care.